I was able to stack up 34,400 points for destroy pops during a night raid on Stellamontes. A big part of why I was able to make this score is because of RNG. I tend to stray away from trying to talk too deep into the RNG problem that Trials has, but the more that I do these challenges and the more I start to see the patterns of how RNG impacts the game, the more I realize that the guides that I'm giving you may be incomplete in terms of what is out there to be experienced. Now, RNG affects the game in so many different ways, but the key area that I'm going to focus on and give some examples of for this specific strategy is the spawns on the map. And just to be safe, for context, everything that I'm going to talk about today in that respect is strictly for the Stellamontes map. I can't say for sure whether or not this is true on the other maps. I suspect that it is, but I'm only going to keep it focused on just my experiences with Stellamontes. Now, before we jump into that, I'll go over the equipment that I use super quick, and then we will get into the RNG dilemma that comes with running trials challenges. For my equipment, I brought 2 light shields, a Venator with 7 stacks of ammo, a hole cracker with 6 stacks of ammo, 9 stacks of adrenaline shots, 2 sets of herbal bandages, 2 sets of shield rechargers, zip lines, and a snap hook. Now, once you spawn in, you want to head for the areas where pops are, and this is where things get a little bit tricky. As it turns out, on Stellamontes, the variety of enemies that can be spawned into an area will change match to match. And what I mean is in the game where I made the 34,000, I had a ton of pops in Business Center. But then the next game where I ran it again, I had a single pop spawning in Business Center and a whole lot of ticks. As far as I can tell, every area on the map is affected in this same way, with some areas having a little bit more stricter policies in terms of what's spawned in that specific area. So what that essentially means is that even if you get an empty lobby, even if you run a perfect route, you could still find yourself coming up significantly shorter in terms of points, specifically because of the RNG for how the enemies respond in during that match. So this obviously creates a very interesting challenge for me, the creator, that wants to give you strategies that you can actually use and can trust that they are accurate in giving you exactly what you need. My worst fear is that I show you what I did in a game, and then you go off and you try and do it yourself, and you can't replicate what I did. So the tough part is that it then creates this level of nuance that almost becomes impossible for me as a creator to fully understand, and thereby be able to feel confident in educating you in what's happening. This isn't specifically just related to pops. In previous seasons doing the Destroy Ticks trial, I ran into this a bunch, but couldn't quite put my finger on what it was, because in that specific case with ticks and spawning or not spawning in communication, it was very hard to determine whether or not it was just I was getting unlucky and there was a player that was eliminating the ticks in that space before I got there and then farming all the components off of it so they disappear on the map, making it seem like there were no ticks in that space. But with this specific back-to-back run that I did and the 2 completely different experiences that I had, where one, I was completely unable to set a high score, even though I wasn't playing my best, only because I essentially had the map to myself, and the map decided to spawn a lot more pops in that specific round. Whereas the second round where I was playing better and my rotation was better, I ended up doing worse in terms of my score because of the fact that the pops were not being spawned in the same areas as the match before. Another example is in my second game, I had to deal with the most amount of flyers that I've ever had to deal with on a Stellamontes run. I had a metric ton of wasps, hornets, and fireflies that I had to take out in both the lobby and the atrium. While it's common for those enemies to be there throughout the match, it is abnormal for how many were spawned in during my match in that specific round. And the irony is in the game before that, the one where I set the high score, I was able to run through those spaces without having any of the flyers get in my way or even needing to take my time or my hole cracker rounds. So all of this leads me to essentially say, so while I am confident in the strategy that I'm giving you, that if you replicate it, you can score high, it also has a dependency on the round that you're in, spawning a similar amount of enemies in the same spaces that I go through for this challenge. So let's get into the actual rotation that I used for this challenge. Now this rotation is a little bit different than the one that I use for shredders. In this case, focusing on pops, the areas that were good for me in my specific round were lobby, Atrium, Metro, Business Center, Robotic Sandboxes, Control Tower, Assembly, and the Central Corridor. Now, if you don't know the map layout and how all of those things connect together, definitely pay attention to the route that I'm running so you understand how everything connected together. That said, I do recommend bringing in a snap hook if you got it, because I use a snap hook in a couple of places to help me get to specific areas faster. You can also just use a zip line if that works better for you, but make sure you bring in 3 to 6 just to make sure that you're covered in all areas where you may want to use that zip line. So like I was talking about earlier, I had a lot of pops that spawned in Business Center, so it became one of the priority areas for me to rotate. From the Business Center, I rotated out towards the Atrium. Now, Atrium can have a ton of different enemies, but it can also have a good set of pops. Depending on whether or not a raider has come through before you, you can have anywhere from 4 to 6 pops to farm between the first and second levels. Keep in mind that the pops have a tendency to hide near the doorways that enter into the space and will basically try and self-destruct the second you come in. So make sure that you are coming with your weapon out, ready to go. From Atrium, I took the ladder down to the control rooms above the robotic sandboxes. Keep in mind that taking this ladder is a little bit sketchy. There is no prompt for you to use to get onto the ladder before you actually leap off the ledge. So you need to drop off the ledge and hang close to the ladder in order to get the prompt to climb onto it. I rotated down to the robotic sandbox that was closest and connected to it. You can find 3 to 4 pops in this area, but there's also a ton of fireballs that will be partnered with them, as well as a shredder. As it relates to the fireballs, you need to be careful with the fireball AoE. You only get points for taking out pops if you deal the damage that causes them to explode. If you eliminate a fireball and it creates the fire AoE, and then a pop goes through that fire and detonates because of the fire damage from the fireball, you lose that set of pop points for that elimination. You have to be the one that takes it out. From the robotic sandbox, I rotated up into the control room, and depending on your spawns, you can have anywhere from 3 to 4 pops in this space. Just like the robotic sandboxes, they will come with a set of fireballs surrounding them, so make sure that you focus the pops first. From the control room, I broke out a window and then dropped down to the other robotic sandbox. You need to be careful dropping out of the control room down onto the ground, as the area that connects the 2 robotic sandboxes together tends to have a lot of pops that like to surprise you the second you drop down onto the floor. So make sure you drop down with your Venator out and ready to go. I cleared out the rest of the robotic sandbox, and then I took the hallway up to the assembly area. The assembly area can be a really great farm place for pops, saying they spawn in during your round. As you're coming into the assembly area, I recommend hugging to the right hand side. That way you can aggro any pops that are hanging out on that side before rotating back to the left. Make sure you're paying attention on the stairways that lead up, as pops like to hang out near those and will catch you off guard if you're not careful. You can also see a set of pops across the hallway from where you're at in assembly, and get those picks early before the fireballs have a chance to put you at risk for those eliminations. Make sure you take out everything in the assembly area so you're not followed and take damage from behind, and then move across to what is essentially the central corridor that leads you back down into the lobby. There is a group of pops and fireballs that will hang out just outside of medical in this space. So make sure you're paying attention and your Venator is reloaded and ready to go. You can get anywhere from 5 to 10 pops depending on how many spawns have come in that space. So make sure that you're definitely ready once you get there. Now from here, you want to just follow the entire hallway back down this central corridor leading you to the lobby. Make sure you watch out for the shredder that patrols near the medical research area that will roam out to the hallway if you're close enough and will aggro to you. Coming back towards the lobby, you essentially want to drop off the drawbridge back down towards the robotic area that you came from. I recommend just taking the ladder instead of jumping over the side so you don't take any fall damage. Using a zip line or a snap hook up into the little shortcut that leads you into the metro area. In the metro staircases, you can find a couple of pops and fireballs depending on how your spawns are. And then you can head down the stairway into the actual metro area. Now the metro area can be a bit of a haven for pops and fireballs, but they are hyper aggressive and will come at you from every angle. I do recommend running across the metro area to the other set of stairs to make sure that you clear out any pops that are hiding up in between the stairs on the other side. Moving up the stairway, you head into lobby, and in lobby, you need to watch out for a whole number of things. The first is shredders will be in that area, and it's usually a group of 2 that will be there present at all times. You can have flyers like wasps, hornets, and fireflies, but it is generally more infrequent than anything else. Moving across towards Atrium, there's 3 different floors that you can go onto. The bottom and second floors are a good place to find pops and fireballs, as they'll just kind of be rolling around. Once you make noise in a space and cause any sort of damage, they will start to rotate towards you to wherever you are. So also pay attention to the audio to see if you're hearing anything coming your way, and then just let them come to you and save yourself the trouble of trying to find them. From the lobby, snap hook back up into the business center, and this is essentially where the rotation started. So clear out business center again, look for all the pops in the space, and then rotate back out to Atrium. This is what I did for the entire run. I just continued to do this rotation repeatedly. Now, since the spawns are somewhat random, you may need to modify your route in real time. Now, beyond that, there isn't a ton more to this challenge. It can be super frustrating though, with how much the RNG can impact your ability to set a high score. But now that you're aware of the fact that it exists, you can be better protected against it happening to you and leave matches and re-queue into matches if you feel like you need to get a better set of spawns. Once you've stacked up enough points and you're happy with your score, head back to Speranza, collect any loot if you haven't already, and watch your score fly up the leaderboard. That's going to be it for me today, y'all. Thanks for watching.